Welcome to the Thriving Chronicles podcast, the show where we dive deep into stories of remarkable individuals who have turned life's challenges into opportunities and are now helping others to do the same. I'm your host, Bryan White, and today we have an incredible guest whose expertise and personal journey will resonate with anyone looking to break free from self-doubt and step into their full potential. Andrea Hunt is a certified EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques empowerment coach, and a world traveler who has dedicated her life to helping professionals overcome imposter syndrome, overwhelm, and emotional roadblocks. Having lived abroad herself, she understands the uncertainty and challenges that come with stepping outside your comfort zone. Through her coaching and EFT tapping sessions, Andrea helps her clients release limiting beliefs, build unshakable confidence, and develop the resilience needed to thrive, both personally and professionally. Her approach is grounded in the idea that fear and burnout aren't fixed traits. They're patterns that can be rewired. By combining EFT tapping, a powerful mind-body technique that releases emotional blocks, with transformational coaching, she empowers her clients to reclaim their confidence and step boldly into the lives they deserve. In today's episode, we'll dive deep into Andrea's personal journey, the science and impact behind EFT tapping, and the actionable strategies to break free from self-sabotage and build lasting confidence. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, feeling stuck, or simply someone on a journey of self-growth, Andrea's insight will give you the tools to move forward with clarity and confidence. So without further ado, let's welcome Andrea Hunt to the show. Thanks so much for being here, us.
Thank you so much, Bryan, for having me. I am super excited to be here.
I just want to start off by throwing the stage over to your way and letting you start us off with how you ended up walking from the seasons of your life into a world of coaching and the tools that you've learned, the experiences that you've been able to have, and what you do now.
So one of the themes in my life is getting unstuck, adjusting and pivoting when necessary, and trying new things. So for example, I'm originally from Minnesota. I didn't really feel like I had a very happy high school part, and I knew that I wanted to go out and do something. I didn't know what I wanted to study yet. I just knew that I needed to go and kind of explore and find myself. I wouldn't have probably used those words at the time, but I ended up moving to Mexico by myself at 20, and what that did was completely open up a world for me where I realized that if I wasn't happy the way that I was or where I was, that I always had the power to change it. And sometimes in life, it doesn't have to be a huge thing like moving to Mexico, or like I moved to China after a breakup at 28 to try to rebuild myself and like in every way possible. Sometimes it can just be something small like starting a morning routine. So I've lived in a lot of different countries, for work or for studying, like Mexico, Argentina, Germany, China, and now I'm based in Germany. And during COVID, so like I ended up getting laid off. Unfortunately, it's not a rare story, it happened to so many different people. And I went through, the ego bash, the depression, the like, oh my God, I'm laid off during a pandemic. Like, what am I supposed to do? And what I realized out of that was I had been wanting to do something with a bit more substance and meaning in life. I really had enjoyed, working in content marketing, working in branding with different companies, but I felt like something was a little bit missing, like something a little bit deeper. And I've always been a natural motivator, and I've done a lot of personal growth, attended tons of different workshops and stuff like that. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, actually, maybe I could turn this into an opportunity. And so it was now we were going into the second lockdown. In Germany, we had 3, and it was getting to be like winter. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I get a certification? Why don't I work on getting a coaching certification? It was online at the time. There was a school from the UK called Animas that didn't have online classes up until that point. And so it actually provided an opportunity for me. And then EFT tapping is something that I have been using for 12 years for pretty much anything in my life, from job loss to breakup to anxiety to just simple emotional regulation throughout the day, to have resilience and being able to manage myself. And so that's just kind of the natural integration of those two things. And so that's what I've been able to do, is integrate the transformational coaching aspect with the EFT tapping to really be able to get past things like imposter syndrome, overwhelm, self-doubt, and the other emotional blocks that can come with getting outside of our comfort zone and trying to do something new.
Let's start with my first question here. What is EFT tapping? I'm sure there's a very large amount of people out there, such as myself and a lot of our audience, that has never heard of EFT tapping.
Sure. So EFT stands for the Emotional Freedom Technique, and it was started by Gary Craig and Roger Callahan in the 80s, I believe. Both of them were into Eastern medicine and acupuncture. And they realized that actually if you tap on the acupuncture points on the face or different parts of the body, that you can calm the body's nervous system and calm the fight, flight, freeze response in the brain. So they just started trying it with different things, even, veterans with PTSD. And now there's around 100 different studies that show that it's good for anxiety, depression, even traumas and phobias. For the purposes of what I do with coaching, I use it to be able to articulate and voice negative emotions and beliefs and be able to kind of neutralize the negativity so that it doesn't activate the fight, flight, freeze response in your brain, and provide a reframe so that you can put positive beliefs on top of it. So it's just really, it sounds really funny. And I remember when I heard of it, I was like, I don't understand that. Why would that be helpful? Everybody, if you see it, it does look kind of funny because you're like, why would you tap on your face? But if you think about it, a lot of times naturally you end up like, if you have a headache, for example, you often rub your temples, or sometimes people will, just right here, or if you're kind of startled or afraid, you kind of might hold your chest. So these are natural acupuncture points that you might be drawn to anyway. But yeah, it's quite fascinating, actually. It's just one of those things like, just try it. You don't have to. Nobody's making you do anything, but there's so many ways that you can either just try it for yourself with a YouTube video, or like to have an app like the Tapping Solution app. But if you want to kind of do deeper things, deeper work, it's more helpful with a practitioner. Kind of like the difference between like going to, like brushing your teeth versus going to the dentist. Like you could do a great job by yourself, but like there are certain things that it's probably important to have a professional help you with.
You said that you had the opportunity to kind of travel to a lot of different countries and you worked in a lot of different spaces. How did you find that the difference in having those opportunities to travel and work and live in different places built your experiences? What kind of difficulties did that bring in always finding yourself in a new place, adapting to a new situation, and finding yourself in new cultures, new time zones?
I would say that China was probably the biggest challenge, but it also really taught me what I was really capable of, because when I moved there, I think I had like $800 to $1,000, something like that in my pocket. I had found an English teaching job online. And by the way, I'm not a teacher. I have a degree in journalism and I have a mass communications. I had never taught before, but I was like, going through a breakup, and I just really wanted to start over in my life. It was like an 8-year relationship. I was 28 years old. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just couldn't stay where I was anymore. So I kind of, ran away to China to find myself again. And actually, it ended up being one of the best things that I could have ever done for myself, because I was totally terrified, and there's so many adjustments. Like I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends there. I couldn't speak Chinese at the time. And so it was just a constant like adjustment and like, okay, I can't get exactly what I want. For example, like on a menu, like, okay, I know this is chicken. I have no idea how it is. Let's just point and get it, because I can't explain. And so you just have to be calm and patient with yourself. And there's also, like other cultural aspects. Like I worked for the Chinese state radio. Obviously, there's a degree of censorship, and there's a certain way that you have to report things for them. And there's even certain subtleties like in the office in terms of communication. And all of those are things that you just have to learn along the way, and have patience with yourself and show yourself grace if you make a mistake and you don't understand something. But I think after moving to China, moving to Germany was quite easy. Like I remember, a lot of people are like, wow, Germany, the US, such different cultures. And I'm like, like, no, after being in China, it's food and mindset and everything. It's different,
Most people would think to have the ability to move to different continents, different areas of the world would require to be a very confident, very trusting person, that you would have to have it all together and know exactly what you're doing and have these plans and structures. Did any part of these large moves come out of confidence and feeling like you knew what you were doing? And how did you find the confidence in yourself to be able to not just run back to where you were from?
That's a good question. So to be completely honest, I was not feeling confident or like empowered or anything at all during the times when I moved to Mexico. I just knew that I couldn't stay where I was. Like I knew that I had to make a change, and I knew that if I didn't buy the ticket and I signed up for like a language school, I was going to go learn Spanish. If I didn't push myself out of there, I would never do it. Both times I got to the guest house where I was staying in Mexico, and then also in China, like at the school where I was going to work. And I sat down on my bed and I cried. And I was just like, oh my God, Andrea, now you've really done it. Like, you're in a foreign country completely by yourself. You don't know anybody. You can't speak to like what have you done? This is either the most brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever, you've ever done. But then both of those times, like I said, those two experiences have completely shaped me as a person. I mean, I grew as a person. I also learned about the world. I learned about how I interact in it. And also, I mean, even before moving to Mexico, I was pretty shy. I was pretty reliant on like having a friend network and everything. I wouldn't have gone someplace by myself. That just I wasn't that independent. And moving to Mexico by myself when I was 19, I was turning 20 that year, I realized that I could be, social and meet new people. And if I was by myself, that I could ask for help and I don't know, I just learned a lot about my capabilities as a person. And in China, I mean, there were a lot of things that were totally, I don't want to say scary, but just, confusing on a daily basis, trying to go get a train ticket, like something very like simple, like waiting in line and waiting in the wrong line and getting to the window and trying to ask for what you want and everybody's behind you and they're impatient and trying to learn to be assertive. I don't know, just so many things. But I think one of the things that I emphasize in my coaching is like confidence doesn't have to be like a light switch. Some people are born with confidence and they just, they have it during childhood, they have it later in life. But for most of us, like it's something that's like a muscle that we have to build up. And so, you wouldn't go to the gym and do one sit up and be like, okay, where's my six pack? You have to kind of keep doing it bit by bit and you start to see the changes and you're like, look at that. I knew it was under there. And so when you move outside of your comfort zone bit by bit and you deal with those feelings as they come up, the fear, imposter syndrome, worrying about judgment, worrying what other people think about us or that they're not taking us seriously. And when we use EFT tapping to kind of neutralize those negative feelings and instead reframe it to be like, okay, look at this. Like I have evidence that I'm creating all the time that I can be confident, that I can handle this. And you can keep challenging yourself and making your goals bigger and bigger. And that's what I think is a very practical, realistic way for most people to do it because we are not all fearless. I mean, I have a lot more confidence than I did in the past, but I'm always trying to like push the bar and challenge myself.
You touched base about one of the things that I struggle with a lot in a few different aspects of my life, and I could not imagine how much imposter syndrome could possibly have risen in you again with all these moves and all these different changes, different cultures, communities, spaces, time zones, all these different things. And you just kept integrating yourself into all these different places. How did or did you have any of that imposter syndrome try to seep in?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that I always push myself, but then I might be like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? I mean, like the job at the Chinese radio, like I have a degree in journalism. I really wanted to work for the radio. Like it was in Beijing. And so I kept applying and they were like, thank you for applying, Andrea, but you don't have the experience. Like, and then I would just try again like a couple of months later because I was like, I really want to do this. And finally the guy's like, okay, you know what? Like, you don't have the experience, but like, I just come in, let's have an interview because you're obviously very insistent about this. And so then, I finally actually got the job. They kind of created a, Beijing reporter job for me because I was doing lifestyle reports. They would have things going on in Beijing and they would send me to report on it. It would be like a tango class that was taught by Germans to Chinese people and things like that. But then when it came to, time for like me to actually record everything and have my little radio package that I made to put on like Beijing Drive or the Beijing Hour. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is international radio. Like, what am I doing? You know? But again, it's like every time that I pushed myself, it ended up being the best thing possible. And you always have to convince yourself that I do deserve this. There's plenty of people out there in the world that might not deserve their positions, and you have to always think, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Like, because we don't have to be perfect, like for everything that we do, the first time is probably not going to be very good, whether it's like, first blog article, first podcast, whatever. And we're always learning and growing. And we just have to trust that we can kind of take the first step and take it from there.
Do you find through the coaching that you do now with your EFT and any of your transformational coaching that confidence, imposter syndrome are some of the larger topics that tend to arise in people?
Absolutely. And especially, I think what a lot of people don't always understand is they think it's like only them. You know what I mean? Like that they're the only person who doesn't feel like they're good enough, or they might be found, people might consider them a fraud. And actually, I think the statistic is something around like, 60-70% of people have those feelings from time to time. And I remember seeing an interview where Shakira was like, oh yeah, sometimes I don't feel worthy, and you're like, what? I mean, when you look at how much she's accomplished and how successful she is, it surprises me that, it's not the people that are not trying to do anything with their lives that have imposter syndrome. It's usually people who are ambitious. They know that they're deserving of bigger things, and they have to get outside of their comfort zone to do it, And when you're like, you have this same job for 10 years or whatever, you feel capable, you feel confident, you feel like you know what you're doing. But the second that you have that idea that like, okay, maybe I should start a YouTube channel, and then suddenly all of these fears of, oh my God, everybody from high school is going to see it and they're going to think I'm ridiculous and no one's going to listen to it. And all of these, insecurities come up in that moment.
It sounds like, to me at least, from an outside perspective, that when it comes to comfort zones, you've always been willing to push your comfort zones. And comfort zones doesn't seem like it's ever been something that would challenge you. Is that just something that's arisen from taking these opportunities and leaping into them and challenging yourself? Or is it true? Have you always been someone who just found it easy to push your comfort zones?
I never found it easy. I never find it easy. I mean, I think there's certain things that I always knew, like if it was in my intuition or my gut feeling that I had to do it, that I would take action on it. But a lot of times, actions that I've taken had to do with a circumstance that, like, changed immediately that I didn't have any control over. I mean, like being laid off during the pandemic or something, I didn't plan for that. Like I didn't have this, this structured plan to become a coach or something like that. It's like something that in the back of my mind, it was there and I kept thinking about it, but I wasn't going to be one of those people that could leave their full-time job and like start a coaching business. Like that wasn't where I was at the time. And the opportunity just arose from having my full-time job taken away, that I was just like, okay, maybe actually this is the spark, the push that I needed. And I feel like many things in my life, the universe or however you want to think of it, is just like, okay, if you're not going to do that, like what about now?
You touched base about trusting your gut, trusting your instinct, and that is something that I live by. I'm a very, very firm believer in trusting my gut and listening to my body. And do you believe that if we took more time to listen to our gut and our instinct, that it would be easier for us to push our comfort zones, challenge our confidence, and kind of grow within ourselves if we were able to listen to our body a bit more and took that time to really feel and know what was going on within us? We could put that out to the universe better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our body's kind of always giving us signals and our intuition, but I think it takes a while to listen to it. I know that there's like tons of situations that, especially in my 20s, where I had a bad feeling about something and I didn't listen to it, and I always, especially about like people, you know what I mean? That when you have that feeling that you're like, and I think in my 20s especially, I didn't listen to that because I was like trying to, I don't know, I just didn't trust myself, I guess. I think in my 20s, now that I'm in my 40s, like I do trust myself. I rely on my intuition. I rely on what my body is telling me, what my mind or, whatever messages. But I did not always do that. And it didn't end well, usually. So it's like, it is something that it's important to learn, whether it's through meditation or, whatever way that you feel that you need to listen to yourself.
Through all the different places you've gotten to travel and all the different experiences that you've had, do you have a favorite place or a place that you would ever love to return back to, even for vacation?
So many places. So I'm usually based in Germany, but I am between Spain and Albania. Usually Albania is like kind of my summer place for the beach. I absolutely love it. It's like amazing seafood, super nice people. And I love Andalusia. I read about it in The Alchemist. I don't know if you've read The Alchemist, but I read it, I don't know, way back in like early 2000s. And so I always had this dream in my head that I wanted to go to Andalusia. And then when I went there, I guess it was maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. And it was just every much as amazing as I had imagined it to be. And so I've gone back almost every year since I went there. So, and I would highly recommend it. It's a magical place, beautiful architecture, just wonderfully scenic. I'd like to head back to South America at some point. I haven't been since 2006. So many places that I'd like to go, like Colombia and Peru and back to Argentina. My original plan was to go to Buenos Aires or back to Buenos Aires and live there. And then I was living in China during the the Olympics and after the financial crisis happened, I was like, well, I should probably just stay here because I'm employed. And my dad was like, I miss you, but honestly, there's no opportunities right now. Back in the US, things were really starting to happen. And of course, everywhere in the world, got affected. But China was still good at that time. So most of the foreigners just stuck around for another 5 to 7 years, which is what I did.
If you could go back and talk to yourself back in your, say, early 20s, what would be one of the greatest pieces of wisdom that you would share with your younger self?
Oh, God, that's a good question. That is really good. I think learning EFT earlier would have helped me emotionally regulate because I think I'm kind of hyperactive anyway, and so if that is not channeled in a positive way, it can easily turn into stress and anxiety. And I think I used to take a lot of things personally. I think like something in their 40s that's really nice is just like being like, you know what, this is me. Like I'm gonna do what I want. Like, I'm proud of the person that I've become. I think trusting yourself and not thinking about so much about what everybody thinks about it, and always making sure that you in some way change your situation if you're not happy with it. You're never stuck, even if it's just a small adjustment that you need to make, and trust your intuition and your gut.
Don't we all wish we could go back and talk to our earlier selves, because there is so many pieces of wisdom that if I could go back and talk to myself in my 20s, I would tell myself a whole lot of different things. Yet, I truly believe that every step, every place we've ever been to, every experience we've ever had is all part of our growing journey, and it's all meant to happen. Everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that there's ever such thing as a coincidence in our life. Every experience, every person we get to meet, every hiccup in life, every catastrophe that we have that we feel like is the end of the world, it's all part of our growing journey.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Has there been any points within your growing journey over all these years and all these different places that you've traveled to that you ran into a space where you thought, this might be the end of it, this might be the last place I travel to, this is where I'm stuck? What was one of your greatest moments of, oh my God, what do I do next?
I would say that was when my relationship fell apart when I was in South America. When I went back, that's how I moved to China, because basically my relationship fell apart. I was going to go work in Atlanta. I wanted to work at Georgia Public Broadcasting, where I was doing an internship at the time. And after the breakup, it was like an 8-year relationship in my 20s. And I literally, now I have better emotional tools, but I didn't have that then, to know what I was going to do. And I had met, when I was in Bolivia, I was in La Paz at the hostel there, where they had like pancake breakfast every morning, which is amazing. But I met an American girl who had been teaching English in Korea, and I was just like, wow, that's amazing. I didn't even know you could do that. She goes, oh yeah, there's like lots of places in Asia you could do it. And I had studied Chinese as a kid, and so like I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe actually I could go do it in China. And so it just kind of like, sometimes you have to really pay attention to the little insight that like, the universe is bringing to you. Because when I got back to the US, I was living in Athens, Georgia, to the apartment where we had lived and everything. He was already gone, and had a breakdown. And then I was just like, okay, that's enough. Like I completely had, a meltdown for several weeks, and I was like, I cannot stay like this. Like this is not going to be how this ends, And so I started looking online. It was Dave's ESL Cafe. I don't know. I think they still use it, but I looked on there and I found a school in Zhejiang, like outside of Hangzhou. And I was like, okay, that's the one. And 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to go into China. So sometimes, especially after a breakup, you're already outside of your comfort zone. It's like, you know what? I need something. I need to go start over. And yeah, that was what I needed at the time, I guess.
It sounds like you've always been a very action-oriented kind of person, that you've always taken action and being able to move yourself forward. From somebody who might not be as action-oriented, what is a tool or what is a thought that you might be able to give them to help them become more action-oriented, or help them to understand the importance of taking action to be able to move forward?
Sure. Well, I think sometimes you don't need to be that drastic, honestly. You can start with small actions. Like just a morning routine, or just doing one thing differently every day, for example. Figuring out like what, in the different areas of your life, whether it's like health and mental health, or like career or family and connections, looking and seeing like, rate those like scale of 1 to 10. And when it's not a 10, be like, okay, well, why is it a 7? What are the things that I'm not happy with? Okay. And so what's one thing, just one thing that I could do to change, to get it from a 7 to an 8, maybe? And if you start seeing things like that, it's a lot easier to take action because it doesn't have to be moving to China. It could just be like, with my family, maybe I'd like to do Saturday morning, I don't know, pancakes, something. This pancakes seems to be the theme. So I just wanted to bring that back. But something like that, just to try to increase things little by little. Because I think sometimes when we get stuck so much in the bigger picture, we forget that sometimes the small actions, can add up. It's like, the Kaizen, it's like the 1% thing. So if you do 1% every day, it adds up to big, huge changes over time.
It is interesting how when we are able to take action and be that 1% better, it really can transform our life. I'm sure that you never saw yourself living in Germany and traveling to all these places, and you couldn't have imagined where your life would have taken you. And it leads me into my next question of what does the next 5 years look like for you? What does going forward look like for you right now?
So what I would really like to do, because I feel like EFT is already pretty big in, US, Canada, and also the UK and Australia. But in terms of Europe, there's not as many, EFT conferences and things like that. And I would like to be the person that is able to go around to different cities and have workshops with people on EFT empowerment coaching. Because what I found was that, with my clients, you're really able to achieve so much when you can get out of your own way. And for many people, they don't realize that a tool like EFT can be so helpful in terms of their limiting beliefs and getting past things like self-doubt, maybe not feeling that they're good enough or maybe that they're not worthy. And I think EFT is quite known in terms of stress relief, which is absolutely amazing for. But I think when you really start to apply it for beliefs and empowerment, that's where you can really transform your life with the emotional health aspect.
So I'm really curious to dive into this further now on how does touching the human body, how does our touch alleviate things like imposter syndrome and confidence and not feeling good enough? What is the connection between touch and EFT to mindsets and thoughts?
So to basically explain like how EFT would work in this case, like let's say you have imposter syndrome. So you would start with a negative round. And the first part, you would be like kind of tapping on your karate chop point. A lot of times we don't actually articulate honestly what we're feeling, what we're afraid of. We go around telling everybody that we're fine. We go around telling ourselves like I'm good enough and I'm smart enough, but like we don't believe it at all. So that's kind of a disassociation between your mind and your body, because you can tell yourself in the mirror like I'm good enough and smart enough and I'm a great public speaker, and then your brain's like you liar. So then when you go do the public speaking, your nervous system just like ramps up and suddenly you're about to have a panic attack. So in an EFT round, we always start, usually there's lots of different techniques, but the standard one is to articulate the negative feelings and emotions first. So what you would do is rate yourself like from a 0 to 10. Let's say you have a presentation and you're like, even though I feel like a complete fraud, I deeply, completely love and accept myself, even though everyone's going to make fun of me, nobody's going to listen to me, like I'm just fearing the worst. You can go through all of the what ifs and all of these things. And so maybe at the beginning you would be like an 8. And you check in with yourself after each round as it releases the negative feelings. And you're like, okay, now it's maybe like a 4. So maybe it goes down. And once you have removed the negative beliefs and you can actually feel it working, just checking in after a couple minutes, then you can go to, okay, you know what, like I'm not perfect. I don't have to be perfect, but I choose to, be open to the idea that this could go well for me. I choose to believe that people might be interested in what I have to say. Why not? That is equally as true as somebody not liking it, and if somebody is bored, like, is that really the end of the world? Like, what do I care? Like I prepared, I'm doing a good job. And so that's basically how it works. It sounds kind of weird, but it's truly amazing what people can do when they are able to just honestly say it. Like I'm terrified of this meeting, because I think we don't really give ourselves the opportunity to be that honest. And when you get it all out, it's kind of like journaling as well. Like when you write things down, you kind of get it out of your head, right? And this is the same thing, except for you're releasing the negative energy.
I'm always very fascinated about how we are so connected from our own touch and touch with other people to how it connects to such a deeper level into everything from our bloodstream to our mental health to everything. What an interesting what's the word I want? Cohesion that there is between. And the energy that it either puts into us or can take out of us.
Absolutely.
So this seems like a great place to bring our conversation full circle. And at the end of every one of my podcasts, I like to pose a very deep question. So Andre, the question that I like to pose is, what is your definition of truly living your best life?
I would say, what pops into my head, authenticity. First of all, not having to suppress yourself for other people. I think living in integrity. And like my company name is Living Deliberately. That's kind of, with full intention, knowing that you are challenging yourself, but also like there's a sense of gratitude and purpose in what you're doing.
That's fantastic. It is when we live in our most authentic selves that I really feel we are able to show up best in the world.
Absolutely agree.
So, Andre, thank you so much for joining us on the Thriving Chronicles podcast. This has been a fantastic conversation. And before we leave here, I would just like for you to share with our audience that if they'd like to learn more about EFT tapping or be able to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Sure. But they can just, they can Google Andrea Hunt, Living Deliberately Today, and they can find me all over Google, my blogs and everything. My website is www.dreahunt.com. That's DREAHUNT. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I am everywhere. And from my website, you can find all my socials as well. I always do workshops, for example, on limiting beliefs, where you can identify your limiting beliefs, see where you got them, and then use the tapping to be able to make changes for certain things. And then I also have tapping sessions that I'm going to be starting in March. And I have a free ebook as well that I'll give you the link to, so they can check it out if they just want to understand, like, why does EFT work? How does it work? And get some of the scientific articles about it, because a lot of people have questions about that. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to being able to check out that ebook myself. It's been a pleasure. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Bryan. I appreciate it.
As we draw this powerful conversation to a close, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for joining us today. If I could ask a favor, that if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone who might also benefit from these insights. When stories turn into conversations, they ignite change. That change fosters growth, and in that growth, we find the strength to live our best lives. Remember to follow and listen to the Thriving Chronicles podcast on your favorite streaming platforms and social media. Together, we can inspire the world, one story at a time, one person at a time. This is your host, Bryan White, signing off. Until our next story, stay well, stay loved, and always remember, if no one has told you recently, you've got this.